I'm with Sean Kunkun, CEO of Dolly Varden Silver. The symbol is DV, like Victor on the TSX-V. Sean, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Pretty good. It's a beautiful day here in Fort Lauderdale. We last spoke in Fort Lauderdale 2 months ago. It's kind of funny to think back on that because I feel like sometimes my conversation with a CEO will mark a bottom, like a really good buying opportunity. Sometimes they'll mark a top. And I feel like we spoke at the silver top at $35 an ounce.
It's
So here we
funny.
are again. So
Yeah.
hopefully that conversation marked the top. I'm fingers crossed this one will mark a bottom.
Well, your timing's good because we are kind of moving into those last few days of tax loss selling before year end. Um, what's interesting about the last time we got together is if you go back the last few years, we got together in early October, but in 2023 and in 2022, September marked the bottom for silver. And it wasn't the case this year. And I think, I was skeptical, and I always bring gold into this conversation because I think, as much as we've seen the industrial use for silver garner a lot of the market, over 50%. I still think it's important silver's investment principles and its relationship as a precious metal and its correlation with gold. So I think it's important to look at gold. And, I was very skeptical. There's only been a handful of years, you can probably count them on two hands, where gold has had, call it a plus 30% move. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but there's very few times in history where gold will put on a monster move and have it. So when I was looking at where gold started January and where it got up to, call it 2000 to 2800, I was really skeptical that we were going to close the year. You know, I was happy with, I thought anything above 2500 would be a great year. And historically, it would put, gold in a category of one of the better performing years. And so, what's interesting is the psychology of the investor, you know, and how correlated these equities are to commodity prices, and how you can take these assets that are essentially worthless in certain price environments. If we were in an environment, say, where silver was $15, there'd be no bid on the sector. Okay. And then if you look at silver at, say, $30, there is a bid, but the difference between 30 and $35, in the case of a company like Dolly Varden, it's the difference between $200 million in market cap on a name that's today a sub $300 million market cap name. It was, I think when we got together, it was closer to 450 million. Today we're talking about 275. So what's interesting is what creates these prices is a very volatile investor, really, for most of these names. And an investor that doesn't have a lot of conviction, okay? An investor that is a speculator, is short-term in nature. And so what's really important, I was actually out for dinner with a friend yesterday, and we talked about how we need to find the investors that are looking to really build a business. And in the case of DV, in the case of Dolly, we've been fortunate that we've come across a Hecla, an Eric, a Fidelity, like real fundamental buyers. And there isn't really a lot of fundamental buyers in the sector right now. And I think all the volatility and all the heartache a lot of investors are feeling, because anybody that put up a deal in the last 90 days, 90% of them are trading below issue price. And so you've got a lot of investors that wish they hit a bid at that 52-week high and are regretting not doing so. And what that's going to cause in the future is it's going to cause a lot of resistance up at those 52-week highs. And what'll happen is we'll trade up there, we'll pause as we take out that overhead resistance, and then we'll go through there. And I think that'll happen by the end of Q1.
there's a lot I want to speak to you about today, but you just touched on a couple of really key points. It's always so, first of all, Dolly Varden's shareholder base. Half of your shareholder base are large institutions. Another 12% is a major silver mining company. 10% is Eric Sprott. So it's interesting. Like Dolly Varden's shareholder base is as strong as any junior mining company out there. But the reality is the day-to-day share price for DV is set on the margin by like 4% or 5% of the shares just changing hands, like Hecla is not selling into the market. They're not buying in the market either. Sprott is not selling in the market. They're not buying in the market either. But there's a little trading float out there that's traded by the ETFs and other speculators, as you said, and that's what can make the price go from 90 cents to $1.30, but also drop it from $1.30 to 90 cents. It's really
And it cuts both ways, right? It's fantastic in a rising environment because you can have. I remember a day, I think it was last year, third week of December, on an ETF rebalancing where we moved up 30% in a single day. And then I remember when we got rebalanced out of that ETF a few months later, it cut the other way. So it's a blessing, and it can be a curse. But at the end of the day, I get back to what are we trying to do here? And I have a mission and a vision for this company. It's very, very simple. It hasn't changed. It is we are creating a top 10 silver equity. And there's two ways we're getting there. Why they're going to be acquired by a top 10 silver company, and our shares will be turned into shares of a top 10 silver company, or we're going to build ourselves there. And we're going to do that through making discoveries, through advancing our project. And we may do that by also acquiring assets like we did in the Homestake transaction. So it's a very, very simple business model. I don't get too excited on the good days or the bad days. We've got over 30 million in the bank. We've got dozens and dozens and dozens of drill results to report. We are going to fly out of the gate in January, and we're going to push hard, and we're going to put our best foot forward and showcase drill results. We've got some step out holes at Wolf. We've got some more Homestake results. We've got some regional results. We're going to get out all this information. We're going to do a great job marketing this news to a large investor base. We're one of the companies that are very active on the road. Robert, I really think we're in a business where, especially right now, you need a great asset, number one. You need great people around that asset, and you need money. This business is very simple. It's projects, it's people, and it's money. And we're at a time right now where, if you look around globally, it's going to be the best assets that get developed next. And I think based on the grades that we have, based on the location, and don't take it from me, look at the investors that have already validated the company. But it is a sobering and somber time in the sector because it's been a 15-year period, give or take. So a decade and change. Because what a lot of people don't appreciate is there are a lot of resource companies that never recovered after '08. Like, it was good for some. I think it was good for you, and I think it was good for me. We caught a QE trade in '09 and '10, but for a lot of accounts, a lot of investors, a lot of management teams, they got wiped out in '08 and they never recovered. And here we are 15 years later plus. And that's why, like, my approach to the business is very simple now. It's buy assets that are extremely undervalued, put the best teams around them, and access that capital. And that's the only way you're going to have a shot.
So Dolly put out some pretty extraordinary drill results November 4th. Definitely an eye-popping headline. Um, Definitely caught my attention, caught a lot of other people's attention. The core in the news that you put out on November 4th is very impressive. The grades are extremely high, but we're kind of accustomed to high gold and silver grades at Homestake, Maine, and Homestake Silver. The company has been, at least from my perspective here in Fort Lauderdale, relatively quiet since then. I know you've been on the road. Is it part of the company's strategy to wait until January to put out more news, or is there some other reason?
Well, I think if you look at the last 5 years, and I can only really speak to the last 5 years because it'll be 5 years for me in February at Dolly Varden. And if you look at that 5 year history, drilling has begun in the late spring, and results would be put out starting in the summer, and they would roll some years into January, some years into February. And this year's no different, right? We did a significant amount of drilling, and those drill results will continue into January. We should be in a position where all the results from 2024 are published in January. Um, and so it's just, the nature of we try to run the company in the most cost-effective way. And the way to do that is to only keep camp open for as short a period of time as possible. So we opened camp this year in May. We closed it in October. So in that 6 months, we worked 24 hours around the clock. And what that does is it can put a backlog in terms of assays because you're creating so much core and you're creating so many samples that, and you're not the only ones. You've got everybody up north doing the same thing. And so assay turnaround times go from 2, 3 weeks in spring to, I've seen years where they go to 16 weeks, right? So it's less strategy. Well, it's strategy in that we're trying to run things cost effectively. So that is deliberate. And but it's we are going to get out the results in a timely manner. And here we are in the last couple of days of the year. I think what's probably most appropriate is get all the results in, analyze them, and then put them out in a way that not only explains what they are, but also explains what they are in a historical context. And then also forward look at, okay, here's what we have. We've got 1 million ounces of gold, 64 million ounces of silver. It's high grade, it's past producing deposits. We've got expansion, extension, areas in between. We've got new discoveries, step outs, validating conceptual models of how to make new discoveries. What do we have? What does it mean? Where are we going? What are the next steps? And so I think it's really, really important. And I think where a lot of companies fail in our industry is communicating that message to shareholders. And I think the one thing that I'm really proud about at Dolly is it's been a very simple story. Look, we started with 40 million ounces of silver. The goal was to get to 100. We got there and through that on an equivalent basis with the acquisition of Homestake, through an incredibly endowed project and some great scientists unlocking that discovery code. We've expanded the footprint. But I think what's really important for me in 2025 is it needs to be a transformational year for Dolly. And, one of the things that I came back from Fort Lauderdale with is I've been contemplating moving the company to a big board listing in the United States. And you asked me about that when we sat down in October, and I took that back to my board, and so we are going to be making that move to a big board listing in 2025. Like I'll put out a letter in early January where I'll outline what our goals are for the year. And one of those goals is to uplist to the New York Stock Exchange, and beyond that, it's really a transformational year in that, I think the move towards economic studies, new resource estimate, and again, really deliberate, accretive M&A opportunities need to be looked at and some action taken towards.
Okay, so Dolly Varden is moving to a bigger exchange in the US on the NYSE. It sounds like probably in
Well,
2025, but I
Robert,
know,
the way I'd
yeah,
like to phrase that is the company has the desire to move towards the application process.
okay, got it. Um, I know in previous conversations, we've talked about expansion potential in some new zones, sort of the center of the property. You have Moose, Chance, Wolf. What is your thinking in terms of what you'll do there and some of those step out targets in 2025?
I think it's too early for me to definitively say in terms of allocation of meters to certain areas. But look, I think overall, what we've understood from the results that we've put out so far this year is number one, there are more discoveries that we can make. And I think what we demonstrated with hits, chance, and at Moose, these are deposits, these are veins that are outside of the compliant resource estimate. And we've proven a periodicity. And so I think one of the most compelling opportunities at Dolly Varden is the idea for more ounces, for more discoveries. So we're going to want to allocate a certain portion of next year's budget, a certain meterage to continue to make new discoveries and to drill out those veins. That's going to be a component. What'll also be a component is Wolf keeps on giving us more. It's expanding. The grades are increasing. The widths are increasing. So we'll have regional, we'll have Wolf, and then the results that you mentioned up at Homestake in November. We're hitting 13 meters of plus 30-gram gold, 30 meters of plus 12-gram gold. There's these bigger mineralized envelopes of 50 meters of 8 grams, 100 meters of over 4 grams. So that'll be a continued component. So, you've got the pure silver in deposits like Wolf and Torbrit. You've got the new discoveries like Moose and Chance. You've got the gold zone up at Homestake. If I had to put meters to a plan today, I would go a third, and a third. But the way we approach things at Dolly Varden is we have a technical committee. We'll get all the results in. The technical committee will rank the targets, and we'll see what's going to deliver the most bang for our shareholders in terms of increasing our confidence in potentially mineable ounces and looking to expand and extend deposits and make new discoveries.
So you said that 2025 stands to be a transformational year for Dolly Varden, or it will be a transformational year. So what does the transformational year, look like at this point? Let's say your market cap currently is 275, 300 million in Canada. What needs to happen aside from the silver price, which you have absolutely no control over, to get Dolly Varden to a 500 million market cap level?
Yeah. So it's a great question. And what I mean by transformational year is 2022 was a transformational year for Dolly. In December of 21, we announced a definitive agreement to acquire Homestake. We closed the transaction in 2022, and that was a big moment. It was a pivotal moment. The company had gone from a $20 million market cap to a $50 million market cap pre-Homestake, and it re-rated to over $100 million on the back of acquiring Homestake and having some success validating the Homestake deposit through an infill drill program and also through discoveries around the Wolf deposit. We got up to a $456 million valuation in September. So we were, about $45 million away from that $500 million market cap that you just mentioned. I think how we get there is we've got an asset. Like I look around at the space, not just silver, but I look at gold, I look at copper, and I look at we're in a market of haves and have-nots. You had your Philos or you have your Forans. You have these companies that seem to have astronomical valuations relative to most of their peers. And Dolly Varden is in a position where it's left sort of the bottom half of the market and it's making its way into a premier project. And in order to fully get there, I think 2025 is the year where we do the drilling that allows the market to really understand why this project is different, why it's got size, why it's got scale. But I think the one thing that's also going to potentially, really supercharge that sort of transformation is, look, we've got a history of accretive acquisitions in this company under my management. And we have monitored. I was just sitting down with a colleague, a senior geologist with the company, and we've got a file that we've been working for the last 5 years of opportunities. Some of those opportunities are in production, some of them are advanced exploration opportunities, some of them are earlier stage, some of them are in the region, some of them are not. We've ranked them, we've looked at what it's accretive. And again, the only two transactions we've done have been in the neighborhood. But I just think that, for a lot of companies, they come out and they say, look, we're not mine builders, or, we've got this one skill set. I think what we have at Dolly Varden is a dynamic team of engineers, of geologists, of capital markets professionals who will continue to grow and evolve as the project dictates. And it's why we've seen tremendous growth. And it's why I'm confident that you're going to continue to see tremendous growth. So, look, I think to simplify it for the audience, silver is moving into a very important year in 2025. Very important year where, we're mining and recycling less than 1 billion ounces, and there's demand for between 20, 30, 40% more of that on an annual basis for the last 4 or 5 years, and that's continuing, and it's only going to get more intense. So you've got a company here that has the ability to grow high grade, quality, mineable ounces in a safe jurisdiction. That's going to be more and more valuable over time. It's that simple. You've got a serious demand issue, in that you've got all this demand coming from industry. You've got investment demand. You've got record high gold prices. The silver opportunity is one that, industry experts, people like Eric Sprott, people like Frank Justra, people who've made billions of dollars in this industry are more bullish on silver than they are about anything else ever. That to me tells you everything you need to know. Follow the serially successful entrepreneurs in our business, and they're all heavy into silver right now. And so we've got the right project and we got the right team, and we don't need to raise any money in 2025. We've got over $30 million in the bank. We've got I just look at this from an investor standpoint. You've got a company here that's almost 50% off from its high, cashed up with a whack of drill results, and the history of drill results have been exceptional. So I think this is a great time when everybody else is thinking about, winding down for the rest of the year, or they're thinking about Christmas. Get out your shopping list and look at the sector and look at what's on sale, because there's a lot of names that have put up deals in the last 90 days that are trading below issue price. And so that's what I'm doing right now. I'm focused on looking for value, and I think Dolly's screaming value right now.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. I actually didn't appreciate it's actually 40% off the high. I mean, obviously that was kind of a fleeting high above 140 very briefly in October, but wow. That and it really goes to show that Dolly is like this hyper leveraged silver play, because when silver was having the run from 22 to 35, I mean, Dolly more than doubled from January, February lows to its high. in October. So basically 2x of the silver move, and now silver's come off about 15 to 20%, and Dolly is down 40%. So the knife cuts both ways for sure, but it's usually better to buy low. And that's an important point you make about the cash, because I'm sure some shareholders were not super thrilled to see the financing back in September, but it turns out that that was actually very shrewd. Get all that cash in the door, don't have to worry about Q4 and whatever happens with the market, and you raised on your terms with no warrants, with a strong hands taking a big piece of that financing, including Eric Sprott. Um, I want to ask you just a final question, Sean. So you talked about um, the size of a drill program, and obviously you're still in the planning stage. I know in 2023 you did 51,000 meters. That was a big drill program. Are you thinking that you'll match that size in 2025, or is it still too early to say?
Look, I think and plans are subject to change, but I think look, I think what's appropriate next year based on the information I have today, and that'll change over the next 30 days, is somewhere in the neighborhood of about a 40,000 meter drill program. So that's what we're looking at. Just moving back to your last point about the volatility. In 2020, the low on Dolly Varden share price in Canadian dollar terms was 16.5 cents. The high was 117. 16 cents
Wow.
to 117. So this last year, we've seen, call it a 60-cent low and a $1.45 high. So it is still volatile, but it's a lot less volatile than it was. And I think what we're demonstrating as the company grows is there's less volatility. And I would assume that, we're going to see those gaps even close from the standpoint of, just, you might see a 2.5 times volatility versus, 8.
Hmm. Yeah, so the range might be like a low of 85 and a high of 170 or $2 or something like that. It won't be a low of 16 cents and a high of 120, right?
Unless we get into some really gnarly crisis.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Let's hope that there won't be a 16-cent price in the future. But as you said, if silver went to 15, the TSX-V would go no bid. But hopefully that's not
But
happening.
this is where like investors, they really need to understand what it is they're buying,
Yeah.
right? And also, and I think that'll help them be better sellers as well. Like the reality is, and Rick Rule is a great resource for understanding what this business is. And he talks about if you brought all the companies together into one co, on a good year, it'd only lose $2 billion. On a bad year, it'd be 15 billion. So, what we're doing is we're going out and we are, as Rick says, we are trying to answer unanswered questions. And sometimes the answers to those are very positive, but sometimes even those positive answers don't translate into a higher value. And I think that's where the investor has to say, well, that that should actually make you want to retain your position, if not add more. You can't let price drive your decisions, and you can't, you have to be a contrarian. You have to look at this industry and you have to celebrate where there is a sale, right? Unless you are a seller, or
Mhm.
unless you're going to just chronically lose money in this industry. And the way you have to approach this is you need to celebrate the fact that the whole sector is on sale. But unfortunately, for some investors, they don't have the capital to allocate, and that then it just translates into the frustration, and that's where you see the rhetoric, throughout the industry, and to me that's just music to my ears. It's when everybody's getting bullish and excited and optimistic that I get concerned and I get worried. It's in moments like this where I go, perfect, we're at a capitulation.
You're either a contrarian or a victim, as you know, Rick Rule is famous for saying, and that's absolutely true. The best deals are made at bear market bottoms. The best stock purchases are usually made at this time of the year, you know, after 2 months of tax loss selling has washed out share prices. So we'll see. And I look forward to speaking in January, Sean. You basically set the stage for a busy January for Dolly Varden. So have a happy holidays and a new year, and talk in January. Cheers.
Cheers.